Welcome back to Business Morning. Mr. Inya Etok Ezekiel, an architect, joins us now to discuss the housing sector in 2015. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming all the way to Lagos.
Anything for housing.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know that you have a lot to tell us.
And the time is very short.
Your assessment of the housing delivery in Nigeria, and it's one critical sector of the Nigerian economy that the government still needs to do more. But what is your assessment of how things fared for the sector before it became housing, combining with housing, with other sectors in the economy?
Okay. Before it was Ministry of Housing, but now it is Ministry of Estate, because in the estate you talk of power, you talk of the road network, and then you talk of the houses. So I think all that is missing there is adding water to it. But now it is a bigger ministry for housing. We're moving from housing to estates. On a serious note, in the past I was very happy when it was made a standalone ministry, and I think it's about the most important ministry in this country. I say that outside of probably Ministry of Information, that's odd, you know. I think Mr. President should have been the Minister for Housing or Minister for Power, because we need to turn away from oil and make it look like it's not the most important thing. So Mr. President taking that is like, on my personal opinion. But coming back to housing, well, a lot of government, except for the immediate past government, really turned a blind eye on housing subsector. But the immediate past government was able to look into housing and put in place structures and systems that will help us. They were able to give us a housing policy after about 21, 22 years. They were able to start the process, up to 80% of giving us a roadmap on housing. They gave us a presidential retreat on housing. And I'm very happy that the present administration, coming to see governance as a relay race, is taking up where the baton ended, and they are continuing. And merging the ministries would actually be a challenge of some sort, because in the past I've worked very closely with past ministers, and you realize that they hardly had enough time to breathe. But when you now take power and the works and join on housing, then what has to happen is like the president that is the governor of 31, 36 states plus the Federal Capital Territory, and yet he is able to operate. So what I see the present minister doing is operating on that corporate principles where the federating units, which is the housing, the power, and the roads, are put in place, the systems and structures that drive it, and he can sit on top of it and network what is going on. So if Mr. President can coordinate 36 states, as it were, in the Federal Capital Territory, a man who's been a governor before can afford to coordinate just 3 ministries.
Okay, before we look at the real estate ministry now, you talked about that as the real estate ministry, power, roads, works now, and housing.
Yes.
You talked about the impact of government policies. You had presidential retreat on housing.
Yes, yes.
Based on the deliberations from that retreat, what impact did that make on the industry?
The first was that we realized that housing is not cash and carry. Housing worldwide is run on mortgages. Before this time, Nigeria, since independence, had less than 25,000 mortgages. But in the past 4 years, we have more than doubled that by the setting up of the NMRC, Nigeria Mortgage Finance Company, and the reinvigoration of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, which is doing an amazing work as of today, because the confidence that Nigerians had lost on account of making contributions that could not be tracked has been completely revived. Because today, if you're a contributor to the National Housing Fund, like I am, I know exactly how much money I have with them.
How many Nigerians actually contribute to that?
That's because there has been, we have run systems where information was not important. But information is key, most vital and fundamental in any governance that is supposed to make progress. We just think people should just keep quiet and follow us. So you pay in money, you don't know what the money is going, you don't know what's being done, you don't know what's coming in, what's going, and things like that. And a stage came when people were like, you don't trust them, whatever they say. So people lost a lot of interest. But we're coming back to the realization of the fact that you owe me to give me the information and to account for me what you take from me. And that's exactly what's happening with the National Housing Fund. Today, all the contributors can tell you what they have, what has been spent, and what they are entitled to. And that is helping people to come back. But what we need is to give them a lot more capacity to be able to deliver it to a lot more people, because it's the contributions they get.
I was just about to ask you
Yes.
that. Would you have preferred it to be a mandatory thing? Because we know what's going on with the pensions industry, where every employer and employee must contribute a certain percentage into the fund to help you to save it. Now, for the housing scheme, do you think, or housing fund, do you think it would have been better if Nigerians were mandated to contribute to it?
They are mandated.
That way,
they are
because
mandated.
not many people know about this.
I'll tell you this. They're mandated, but it's like asking me to do something. A stage comes when even the people asking you to do it are reluctant to do it, because they just think. There was a time that Central Bank openly said that the Federal Mortgage Bank was a bottomless pit. There was a time. And they were not even contributing until the present management came and put in place systems and structures that were extremely transparent and accountable. So people are now starting to come back. What they need is to do a lot more publicity, which they have been doing within the limited resources they have. But you see, those talks don't translate to much unless we can see. I'll give you a very typical example. There was a time that a state like Kaduna had about 30,000 contributors. Because they're only giving, say, 2.5% of, imagine what 2.5% of 18,000 is. You're talking maybe in terms of 600 naira or less than that. The volume that came from 30,000 contributors was less than 5 million, or about that. 5 million is what would go to just one person. So if you work strictly on contributions, you realize that 30,000 people will contribute for only one person to earn. No matter how transparent and accountable you are, the rest of people are going to feel disenfranchised, because common sense tells you that in their lifetime, over 90% of them will never ever have access to it. So what we've been advocating is to tell government that since these people have put in place these structures and systems that people are saying, well, this makes sense, give them extra capacities, extra impetus, so that instead of giving to one person in Kaduna, if they can give to 1,000 people in Kaduna, the rest of the 39,000 people, you know, Winston Churchill says that hope is the anchor that stabilizes the soul. By the time you realize that this man, that man, the other man, that, which is what lottery, you know, kind of thrives on, you know, you get to believe that it can get to you. But if all you hear is that nobody has got him, then you're not encouraged to. So I think that what government should do, by way of, now that there's no subsidy, thank God, you know, maybe they should move a whole chunk of this money to a place like the Federal Mortgage Bank.
Don't forget,
so that
even if the subsidies were removed, as been said in the news, a lot of the sectors of the economy that needs attention.
Let me tell you.
I know you may say housing should be one.
Not just that housing should be one. In every economy developed, housing is always prime. In every economy, including America. What brought the economic meltdown? Housing is key, is prime, for so many reasons. Not only does it affect the productivity of the people directly, or their dignity and pride as human beings, it's also the sector that's the largest employer of labor. Today, Nigeria is awash, is emerged in joblessness, or lack of jobs.
All right.
So what makes more sense than for you to go into the sector that gives you the fastest returns on investment?
Now, the basic questions that everyone asks is, how many Nigerians had access to good homes or houses in 2015?
Now you hit the nail on the head.
Let me just give you the statistics. Now, the National Bureau of Statistics and the United Nations some years ago said that the national housing deficit was then was estimated at between 12 to 16 million housing units. Now, how many Nigerians were able to access good homes for 20
the first
affordable homes?
Yes, the first thing is that the current minister has decided that data and statistics is very important, and I agree with him 100%. So we've been on the 17 million for the past 10 years, 17 million, and it's starting to sound very unrealistic and unreasonable and almost comical. So the present minister has decided he's going to network with the Bureau of Statistics and then the population to be able to have a more realistic current housing deficit status for Nigeria. That's number one. But no matter how you look at it, Look at 17 million deficit. Take an average cost of about 2 to 3 million for you to have a house. You see an investment potential of over 50 trillion. It just makes common sense that government should look into such an area. 2 years back or so, I was privileged to be probably the only African, not probably, I was the only African that was the main speaker on this global conference on affordable housing. And when you talk about Nigeria, you realize that so many people into the housing business are so interested because market drives incentives. Market drives one wanting to invest in a certain area. They want to come to Nigeria. So all we need to do is to put in place systems and structures and certain stability, and people will come in. But then that is on the provision aspect. While they are coming in, the loop must close. They must see how they are going to take their money back. So you must empower Nigerians to be able to take the money out. I'm happy that pensions is now being tinkered with for them to be able to assess pension funds for housing delivery. An amazing thing. Apart from that, there are other things. They're now talking in terms of unclaimed dividends, dormant accounts, all these things. Let the government. Today we have a government that has a political will. Let them step into these areas. All these funds, for instance, dormant account, we can afford to pay 5% interest on account that is earning 0 interest, and yet people are making over 20% from what they claim to be dormant. Let those things be under government guarantee, moved into housing subsector, because the real estate is about the most stable globally area of investment. And we've started putting in place, you know, what you may call the laws and the criteria for loan facilities in mortgages, which is what the NMRC is doing. So a lot is coming in. Finally, because I know my time is up, I think that the minister must do Nigerians one thing.
I was just going to ask you that the combination of this ministry, housing, power, and works together. And yes, you said a lot about what should be done in housing. And if you look at the power sector as well, there'll be a lot to be done. Same with works. How do you think it can achieve this within the shortest period of time?
The greatest, two things is, I'll talk as an administrator, bring the best of corporate approaches to stuff. But for me to talk as a lawyer, when I'm an architect, is the worst disservice I can do to Nigerians. Let our governor, our minister, who is able and capable and competent, look at social housing. Let him send, within a week, I was a consultant in Senate on the social housing. I'll give him all the details he needs. Within a week, a month, he can send a social housing bill to the Senate. That will give him extra funds, no matter how small it is, for him to be able to work independent of the budget of the ministry. Because in social housing provision, I can tell you how he can make so much from so little.
Oh, you're making some advertisement for yourself there.
For me, I wonder how that benefits me, doesn't it?
All right,
Absolutely
thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Inya Etok.
Thanks so
Ezekiel, an architect there. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure.
Talking about the housing sector and the housing delivery for 2015. We will continue with this conversation after the break.